let's go for the next part. We have part 4. Okay, so I think so our last part was, we had 8 parts, so we're almost halfway through it. Now this is a very, I would say, interesting part that we'll be covering. It might be a bit confusing, but I'm really hoping it kind of makes sense, right? Because, yeah, let's just work on it and see how it makes sense. Okay, so we are going to be covering Route 53, and then also what is a private and public hosting zone within the Route 53. We're going to be covering CloudFront, edge location, regional edge location, S3, and also origin access identity, bucket policy in Web Application Firewall or WAF, right? Again, you might be new to those concepts. You will still know at the end of this part what's the main purpose of those services, or what they actually do. For example, if someone asks you what a Web Application Firewall does, in one sentence, you would know what it's going to be doing, right? Okay, so this is where we left off from the previous video. So now imagine we have some users, right? So they are trying to reach out our services inside our VPC. What's happening? So a user sitting on their computer, they're going to be typing this domain name or this URL, www.example.com, right? What happens is it first go through the Route 53, right? And what is a Route 53? Route 53 is like a phone book, right? So for example, you wanted to reach out someone and you don't remember their phone, and then you're kind of in old times, instead of your phone contact list, you go through the phone book and you see, okay, that's the name of the person and that's their phone number, and you reach out to them. Or maybe kind of like, can think of yellow pages, right? So you have the name of a kind of like an organization or a company, and then you have their phone number. Okay, so if this is ABC company, that's their phone number. This is XYZ company, that's their phone number. So basically, the DNS service or the Route, so Route 53 is actually a DNS service for the for AWS, and what it does is it has the names. It has the domain names and it has the IP addresses, right? So if you give the specific, I would say, URL, it will look up and find what IP address it corresponds to. And then based on that, it kind of routes you back. That, for example, if this example.com was the domain name for this application and here, then we are going to be looking for a specific IP address that this application has, and then we'll be routing it to that, right? So I'm a user, I'm typing this into my browser. From the browser, it goes into my Route 53, right? So it goes to the Route 53, and then Route 53 is going to send me this thing. So 10.0.2.1, this means I'm trying to reach out this web server. So I wanted to do something with this web server, so it's returning me this IP address. And then once this IP address is being sent to me, and then through that IP address, I will be able to reach out to this web server, right? And again, what happens, again, if you might not be able to be reaching out directly, we might be doing that through the Bastion host and then into the web server. So this is an example. I would really not want to go into this one because it's a bit complicated, but I will have the slides available, and anyone want to look into it, they can do that. There's basically like the difference between a cloud, like what the CloudFront is doing and what Route 53 is doing, or how the traffic is being sent from the user to the CloudFront into the Route 53. So a user can reach out, can access services within a VPC or AWS region through the Route 53 directly. So from the client to the Route 53 and then into our kind of AWS region, or they can go through the CloudFront and then to the region. So let me show you what I mean. For example, like this Route 53 can directly reach out to these regions, right? Without CloudFront, right? So or it can, what can it do is like it can go through the CloudFront. So I didn't mention what a CloudFront is up to this point, but let me just put it here right now. So here you go, you have CloudFront. In the CloudFront, imagine this as an express delivery, right? So you wanted to deliver your content really, really fast, right? in a more secure way, then what you do is you go through the CloudFront. So like, as I said, a user can go through the Route 53. Route 53 acts as a phone book, looks up the domain name that corresponds to a specific IP address and route that to that specific service that you wanted to reach out to. But if you wanted to go through the CloudFront, it might make it more faster for you, and then it will make it more secure. And why it does that, like how CloudFront make it more, I would say, faster for you. And the reason for that is it has something called, I would say, edge locations, right? I can see like I dropped these WAF in here, but I'm going to talk about them later. But at the moment, just think about this one. See this part. So edge location and regional edge location, right? So imagine there is, I also dropped S3 in here. So S3 is considered that just as a storage and a cloud. And then in that storage, you have something that you wanted to access, right? So if I'm a user, right, and I wanted to access something in this S3 bucket, I first am going to check out the edge location. If that thing is available in the edge location, I don't need to go through my origin, which is S3. In an edge location, consider that is kind of like a mini station that's holding or that's keeping more frequently accessed items ready. So for example, if there is a certain website that's being frequently accessed, or a certain item or a photo, for example, that's frequently accessed from this S3 bucket, so it's being ready in here, and every time a user is trying to access it, they are not routed to the origin, but they're being just routed to the edge location. You get it from there, and that's it. So, and then if the edge location doesn't have that item, they go and they check out the regional edge location, right? So at this specific region, there is a regional edge location, and they look into it. If it's not there, then it will go to the origin. So maybe like this S3 bucket is actually in this other region, right? And then since the S3 is here, and then they have a regional cache, regional edge cache right in here. So it's going to bring the content from this region and put it into this regional edge cache, and it's going to look for it in here, right? So this S3 bucket can be in the same region, at which point you don't need the regional edge cache. You just have an edge location and you get that from that. But if it's in a different region, then you have to have like a regional edge cache where you have you can get those contents from there. So like what happens is usually the CloudFront is meant to have different edge location around the globe, right? So you have like your main origin, and then you have different, I would say, many stations that you can access. You can have frequently accessed item into those regions, and then you can access it from there. So you don't have to go through your, I would say, origin or directly. So let me just go through something, right? I know this topic is a bit confusing, or I made it confusing, I don't know. But I want to do something. So I wanted to put regional, so I can put this thing, CloudFront regional edge cache, right? So let me see if I can find an image that's more easily to understand compared to what I had there. I was kind of thinking to access it that way, but I think so I didn't do that. So let me just go through this one. I hope it kind of makes sense a little bit, right? This one is not that good. Let me see this one. Okay. You can go through this one. This one, I think so it kind of makes sense as well, right? So if you look into this one, so imagine there is an AWS service that you wanted to reach out. So first, what you have is you have regional edge cache, which is kind of like the bigger cache, right, at the regional level, and then you have edge locations, which are a bit smaller, and then you have your viewers who are trying to reach out to the services. So this viewer can come to the like edge location. If the item is not found there, then you go through the regional edge cache, and if it's not there, then you go to the origin, right? So this is one thing. Let me see if this is a good one or this one. There was a really nice one that I try to have. Maybe let's see this one, right? This one might be a good one too. So like here is a kind of you have a S3 or EC2 instance or any kind of service you wanted to access, right? So you have your regional edge cache and you have your edge location, right? So the item is being cached up at the regional edge location. So this user that's trying to reach out to this edge location, right? It's not found there and goes through the regional edge cache. It's not found there, then goes through the S3, right? So once that photo or that item is being accessed by this user, a copy of it is being kept at the regional edge cache. So now if this user is going to come and they cannot find it at their own edge location, they come through the regional edge cache. They see it because it was accessed before by this other user. So now this user can have access to it because it's being accessed before, it's being kept here. Now this person is going to get it. That's why it make it faster, right? Because you have those many stations that kind of keep frequently accessed items that other users, when they come, they don't have to go all the way to the origin. They come to a regional edge cache location, and that's where they get their item from. And this is how I would say the CloudFront is going to work in terms of making it a bit easier for the users to get those things. And the kind of this one is the same concept, right? So I won't go into that one anymore. So I think so it kind of made sense to you, right? Okay, so let's see what's this one. This one is kind of a bit blurry, right? But I think it kind of makes sense if you see it here. So before previous architecture was actually everyone was trying to access the origin. So maybe like the traffic, it was like an overload traffic at the origin. But now what happens is like origin is serving content to regional edge cache location, and then the viewers or the clients are accessing them from the region, from the regional edge cache. They don't have to go all the way to the origin. It's kind of offloading the traffic to the regions, to regional edge cache, and that's how it kind of make it more faster. How about this one? Let me just talk about this one too, right? Because I did mention like how user can go through the Route 53 through the CloudFront and here, right? So it can go through the, I would say, directly to those like users through the Route 53 can directly access the, those origins, like maybe S3 or EC2 instances, or they can go through the CloudFront. If it's through the CloudFront, it's going to be more, I would say, more faster and more secure, because CloudFront has some security attached to it as well, which I might be explaining it in a different video, not at this one. So, okay, so for this one, if you can see in here, they have like the VP dash thing, like content slash star. So anything that have this specific URL, right? Like at the end, for example, you might have a main URL, and then you have this part attached at the end of a URL, right? For example, like in here, you can have like google.com, and then this part, if the URL has this specific part in there, then it's being routed to an S3 bucket. But if it's kind of a login thing, kind of more an interactive session, it goes to an EC2 instance, because the EC2 instance is actually a compute services. It's a worker, it's doing something, but you have some static content like photos and kind of static web pages is kind of resides in the S3 bucket. And that's where it reaches out. Kind of like once it goes through the CloudFront, how does it know it has to go through to an S3 bucket, or how it can go through an to an EC2 instance? For example, in this one, right? Let me just go like quickly full screen on this one. So I say like this user once it goes through the CloudFront, how it knows that the CloudFront should send it to an EC2 instance here or to an S3 bucket here. It kind of depends on the URL. So like the sub part that you have in your URL, if it's something like has a content /star, it goes to an S3 bucket. If it has like kind of a login and admin kind of thing, you are part like sub part of the URL, it might be directed to an EC2 instances through some loads, through some type of load balancer, right? So I think so this concept of a CloudFront kind of routing the traffic was kind of clear a little bit, right? So let me see what do we have in this architecture in here. So we have an S3, we have a user, we have an S3 origin, and then we have a CloudFront. I'm assuming this is a bit more complicated at this thing. Yes, we do have a regional edge cache, we have edge location and everything. But at this moment, I would say this is a bit more advanced level than what we had before. So, this was a really nice one. I think I was looking for something like this to explain how the edge location work, right? So like, I think so we did get a point of how it looks like, but here it is. We have an S3, which is like in the specific part, maybe EP South kind of something region, somewhere in here, right? And then you have some users in, say, South America, you have some in North America, you have some users in Australia, you have some ones, I'm not sure, is it China or which part it is, but a bit maybe like Europe, who knows, okay. My apologies if I'm not that good in geography. Kind of, I would say, terms, right? But anyways, that's not the point. The point is I have an origin here. So this user is going to access something through the S3 bucket. And then that's being, a copy of that is being cached out in this region. And then now if this user is going to try to, another region is, which user is going to reach out, is not going to go through the origin, it will go through the, I would say, through the specific region, and not region, the specific edge location, and they will access it through it, right? And then also, for example, since this thing was being cached out in here, or maybe I would say it in this way, right? So here I have an origin, right? Let me just rephrase everything I said. I have an origin here and I have a specific edge locations in here, right? So it works this way, right? So we have, I would say, some users in here, they kind of reaching out to the origin, but then we have some caches in here. So once this one specific user reached out to the origin, that item was being cached out here. Now this other one doesn't go again all the way across the ocean to this origin, because the longer the way, the more latency it will have, right? And it will not be fast. So it's not going to go all the way to the origin. This third user is going to access it from this cache, right? So this is now, these are the regional edge caches. This is my origin and these are users. Once being accessed by one user, it's being cached out at the regional edge cache. And then what happens is that the other users doesn't go all the way to the origin. It goes back to the edge location and get it from there. So I hope it was kind of clear, right? Okay, so this is a nice, let's say, architecture as well. And the reason I'm going through more architectures, because it's a nice way you will get it better as compared to just one, I mean, my PowerPoint that I had, because these are more nicer, more beautiful as compared to what I had, right? I think that this is a really nice one. So like it's a CloudFront architecture, right? So what you have is you have your edge locations, the smaller ones in here, and then you have your regional edge cache, right? So the first what happens is this lady or this girl is checking out the regional edge cache, right? So if it's not there, then it's going to check our regional, this kind of our edge location. If it's not there, it's going to check our regional edge cache. And if it's not there, then it's going to fetch that photo all the way from the origin. And now this photo is being is sitting down in this regional edge cache. Now another user is coming along, right? And then they check the edge location. If it's there, they access it from there. If it's not there, then they go to the regional edge cache and they access it from there. So it's kind of offloading most of the traffic, I would say inquiries, not the traffic, I mean, most of the traffic that's going to the origin. So if everyone was trying to reach out to this origin, there will be so much traffic on the origin, but since they're getting the their item or their content from the regional edge cache or from the edge location, it's going to be much more easier. So this is a really nice diagram, right? So I would even wanted to I'm not sure, copy this thing and paste it into my PowerPoint because it's a really nice one. Maybe I can just simply do that because it kind of clears everything in a very nice way. I will do that really quickly. It doesn't take your time. Let's see. And then I will be sharing this thing, excuse me, these PowerPoint slides with you guys so you know what I'm doing. Okay, so that's okay. So let's just go back to where we were going, right? So this is where we are. I'm going to make it full screen once again. We talk about the concept of the edge allocation and regional edge. I think so. Really hope was clear enough. And then the only other thing was the web application firewall, right? If you do wanted to make this access more secure, so you add the web application firewall to it to make it more secure. Again, there will be like some more security adding it to this to the users accessing through the CloudFront or and then through the S3 and then through the EC2 instances. I won't go into details about the WAF, but you can put the WAF between the user and the CloudFront and also between the CloudFront and the internet. So two different to make it more secure. So first it's me accessing the CloudFront, in between the WAF is coming. And then the CloudFront accessing the EC2 instances or the S3, another WAF, right? So like putting WAF at two different stages between the user in the CloudFront and between the CloudFront and then the origin. It's kind of making it more secure. So I hope this is making sense, right? So let me see. Yeah. So this is again the concept of the users reaching out the edge cache. I won't go into these ones because you did get the point, right? So like, for example, if a user is trying to directly reach out to the EC2 instances, they cannot do it. They have to go through the CloudFront. And also if the user is trying to reach out the S3 directly, it cannot do it. It has to go through the CloudFront. There's an option where the user can access the S3 bucket directly if the S3 bucket is, I would say, public. And if the user has the URL for the S3 direct, if the user has the URL for the S3 directly, that's when users can go through it. Can access it. But if I have configured my S3 bucket through the CloudFront, right? So and then my users have to go through the CloudFront and then to S3. And how does it work? So we have something called origin access identity in an S3 bucket policy, right? So if you don't know what those terms mean, it's a simple way of saying that I'm configuring my S3 bucket in a certain way that the user cannot access it directly. The only way for them to access it, they have to go through the CloudFront. So that's the main purpose of it. But again, how they work, I'm going to be having like more videos on more specific details of them. And then I have, we did talk about the Route 53, but we have something called private hosted zone and we have a public hosted zone. Again, the way we talked about was Route 53 is like a phone book, having the names, corresponding phone numbers, having URLs or domain names, corresponding IP addresses, right? So if it's a public one, this means, so anyone from the outside is trying to reach out to services in the public subnet, that's where all the information, the domain names in the IP addresses will be in public hosted zone. But what if this database wanted to talk to this web server, for example? In that case, then we're going to be having private hosted zone. So say, for example, this database also have a domain name. So that can be like www.example.com/db, right, for database. In this case, this web server has the name of the database, in which case is the domain name for the database, but it doesn't have the IP address. So what the web server does, it goes through the private hosted zone, looks up www.example.com/db, and then the private hosted zone is returning the specific IP address, and then it goes through that IP address. So this is how a private hosted zone works. So imagine the private hosted zone is a private phone book, right? So only internal people are using it. And then public hosted zone is a public phone book that anyone from the outside they wanted to access the public services, and here they can do that. So that's, yeah, here you go, like this is how I have it. And here, and then Route 53 is like a phone registry or a phone book. Okay. Yeah, and then we have private zone registry as well. The concept for the CloudFront can be like an express delivery system, and then the edge location are express delivery stations, and then the history in simple terms can be like a public storage. Okay, so that's I think so that's a good amount of stuff that we did cover.